Kia ora and welcome once again to Maven, Maven Time in the Nest. That is awesome. We, somebody is very excited to be joining us, and I'm not going to edit that out. That is awesome. Welcome to the Fundraising Nest. And we've got two special guests that appears today. Joining us today in the nest is the amazing and fabulous Ligia Pena, who is an international legacy consultant and strategist at Globe Trotting Fundraising. And her dog apparently. Good morning, Ligia.
Leo. Hello. Yes, that would be Leo, the 7-month-old Labrador and German Shepherd, who's got
Yeah,
very
likes to
big
be on
lungs.
camera too.
Sometimes, but now it's more his voice than his face.
That's
Clearly
awesome.
seeing birds outside.
We already know one good thing about you. You have a dog called Leo. So now, would you like to tell us about you? Who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? I'm an import from Argentina. I live in Canada. I'm just north of Montreal, which is a very cool city for anyone who has traveled to Canada in the past or wishes to travel to Canada. Montreal is super cool. So grew up in Canada. So although I have Latin roots, I am very much North American mindset. I did not plan to become a fundraiser. I actually wanted to be a lawyer. And boy, did I land far from that. Although, funny enough, with what I do now, having a passion for law also does help.
Absolutely.
Fast forward a few years, I end up getting my first fundraising job working as director of development and communications for the YMCA here in Montreal. And it was just a revelation to realize that, hey, they're going to pay me to do what I used to do as a volunteer. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And you know, it just went on from there. I've held a lot of
Brilliant.
different positions, and I always loved gifts and wills and bequests, and just decided to, after many years of being a generalist as a director of development or director of fundraising, I wanted to specialize in one thing, and legacies was something I did all the time, but it wasn't 100% of my time. So I decided that that's what I was going to do. And so I landed the
Brilliant.
job at Greenpeace International and ended up doing that in many different countries, in about 14 countries around the world. Got to travel the world, which was another passion of mine. And
Mm,
here I am now, just doing all of that 100% of the time. And I love it. I love it.
brilliant. We were just chatting before we went before we hit record there that we have been friends for coming up for 5 years since I started at
Yeah.
Fins, and we have this is our first real conversation. We have had opportunities missed, and you have
Yeah.
been part of what we've been doing, what I have been doing, and it's so nice to finally have this conversation with you. I'm a great fan of what you do, and so yes, thank you. And you've come on board as one of our mavens, which is fabulous, and yeah, it's just really cool to have you on board. So thank you very much. Legacies are interesting, aren't they? We did a big piece of work in New Zealand last year around gift and wills research, and it was fascinating. I think there was some great insights. New Zealand is now check free, and so during that process of the demise of checks, there was a shift in behaviour and in
Mhm.
how people kind of were giving. And one of the there wasn't quite enough data, but definitely enough to indicate, and I wasn't surprised that with the demise of checks, as many donors had decided, okay, I'm not going to transition to digital. I'm just not doing it. This is how I like to give. So this is my last check. But what they did, strong indications are that they have now decided who they're leaving a legacy to and have made that change in their will. So
Hmm.
it's real insightful information for charities
Mhm.
when they're looking at how their donors give and the demise of traditional things like checks.
Yeah. It's
Go
interesting
ahead.
to see the correlation between that, because at the end of the day, there, when, and not to sound morbid, but at the end of the day, it's not something that impacts them anyway, because they're not going to
Yeah,
be around. So it's
Yep.
so fascinating how the mind
Yep.
works and how it makes those connections in that
Yep.
way. It's just
Yeah, I
fascinating.
think the demise of checks combined with a pandemic at the same time
Yeah,
was just, it just changed it. It made death a reality. It made their future. It
yeah,
changed how they were physically doing things, and so I think it's a really exciting space in the well, all around the world,
yeah,
and I think it's really interesting to watch how the change of being able to the digital transition will impact
yeah,
gifting wills. So
yeah,
tell us, the community hub is about supporting people. We briefly mentioned that. It's about finding your people. It's about finding this space, which is a trusted space to find the good information. I'm pretty sure over your life you've been inspired. This is about people inspiring people. So
hmm
I am sure you've been inspired by people along the way. Have you an example of someone who's inspired who you are as a fundraiser?
Mm. There's been so many, and it's interesting because sometimes I'm a bit of a rebel, and sometimes it was more out of spite that I did what I did to move forward, as opposed to being inspired because I wanted to emulate something. It was
Yep.
more of my FU, basically, to
Yep.
things.
Yep.
I didn't want to say it just in case it's not okay to say that here.
No, you can totally swear. Appropriate swearing is one of our values.
Okay. Just okay, perfect. People in the States get their knickers up in a twist when you swear. So I always feel like I have to like hold back, but I sometimes can talk like a truck driver. Anyway, um, or lorries, sorry. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, so over the years, I would say it's been different people that have brought many things. I remember actually in that position that I was mentioning during my intro at the YMCA, at one point someone started working in the foundation, and she had been doing planned giving legacies at one of the local children's hospital, and she was a lawyer by training, and I realized years later how much that had impacted me. We kind of butted heads a little bit at times because of my immaturity. I was very, very young, and didn't was kind of making things up as we go along. Because like in the early 2000s, there weren't any schools, any programs. There was no education to be a fundraiser like there are now. Now, like almost every university has some sort of course. So she played a big role in exposing me to everything that has to do with legacies. But I would say, as of late in the last few years, and unfortunately she passed away during the pandemic, was Simone Joyaux, who was a very big, I got to work with her when I was chair of the Conference Education Advisory Committee for the AFP International Conference. And we got to know each other even better, more personally as opposed to just professionally. And she was a big supporter of professional development, and she really inspired me and pushed me to apply to do my PhD. And um, so
I think,
I
yeah.
keep this, which is a card that she gave me. She sent to
Yeah.
me after one of our meetings, and it says Certificate of Awesome for justice kicking ass and truth teller. And it
Oh, right.
stays on my desk all the time because she will remain always one of my biggest inspiration.
I think she left a legacy with many, many people around the world, and we did acknowledge the passing just recently. Well, one of her final interviews that we had, and yeah,
Mm,
amazing, amazing, well, incredible Wahine Toa, we call them in New Zealand. A strong, strong woman. And you're
mhm.
right. My kind of desire to, I guess, create what this is evolving into every day is 50% through inspiration and 50% through being shown how not to do shit. Like that is not how I want to be a leader. That is not how I want
Mhm.
to do stuff. So I think when you can get that combination of inspiration and how not to do things, you got a pretty good
Yeah.
recipe to bring some people together.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's something that you've also experienced as you're getting older is so I turned 50 last year, so I'm 51 now. And I would say in the last few years, it's been a revelation of getting to that point where I've built my career. I recognize I'm privileged in many, many different ways, but I've also had drawbacks being not from this country, speaking a different language and all of that kind of stuff. But I realized that I just don't give a fuck about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't care. And that was also something that I learned and I picked up and I would rub myself against Simon every time I see her because she didn't give a shit. She was like, I'm gonna tell you what you're saying is bullshit. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
explain to but I'm gonna explain to you why
Ah,
it's bullshit. It wasn't just frivolous. It was just I will challenge the status quo because of XYZ, but it's
yeah.
backed with evidence and everything.
Yeah.
And to me it's kind of nice to be sitting in that place where I feel like I'm secure enough in my position in my career to be able to say that. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. I certainly
Yeah.
wasn't like that when I was younger.
I'm
So,
getting there. I'm 45 in November, so I'm hoping another 5 years and I'll be just nailing it like you. I'm almost there, but that kind of piece for me, through kind of my own life, I didn't leave school. I'm not educated in a formal capacity. I don't have a degree in things, and so my imposter is around. God, I don't have those qualifications, but actually, I've got qualifications in a whole other
oh
world
God.
of shit. It makes me just as valuable. But it
Uh-huh.
takes a long time to just one of my favorite comparison is a thief of joy, and
Mhm.
that's when you benchmark yourself against other people, you're never going to fully release
No.
yourself.
No, exactly. And having formal education does not necessarily mean you're smarter than everybody else. Like, it just means that you just spent a lot of time reading books, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I did, and I know, like, I've got two
Yeah.
bachelor's and masters, and I'm doing my PhD. I don't consider myself smarter than you or anyone else. Um, I think I think smart is can be shown in so many different. It looks it's as diverse as we all are, I
Yeah.
think.
No,
And
absolutely. And I think a lot of it is instinct and who we are. Because when as I similar, oh, I've not done any of this training, and as my career's advanced, I've been like, oh God, I've not read that person's book. Oh, so as I've started, I do a lot of reading, and as I'm reading the books, I'm like, I did this, I did this. Oh, this is how I do it, and it's like,
mhm,
I do know what I'm talking about.
totally, absolutely. And no matter how much you know, how old you are, the imposter syndrome is always there. There's always that little voice because as women also, we're
Yeah,
also taught to, don't talk too loud, just be nice. All of those things that we're socialized and it's so systematic in society that, it's you always have that little voice, that little voice, that little voice. So I still
yeah,
have that. I hear it
yeah,
less. I shut it down a lot faster than when I was younger, but it's still always there. You're always like, oh,
yeah,
well, did I say that the wrong way? Am I pissing off a lot of people? And then
yeah,
sometimes I'm like, well, I'd rather ask for forgiveness than ask for
yeah.
permission.
Absolutely, 100%. And so one of the things that blows my mind about you, you are a hardcore legacy nerd, which I love, but you also speak how many Spanish, French, English, and manages in Portuguese and Italian, which suggests to me you manage. I mean, that's incredible.
Ish, ish.
That is an incredible array of languages, and that must be incredibly helpful when you're
Mhm.
working internationally. And
Yeah.
is the languages is how communication within legacy giving, for example, different within languages?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So the province I live in Canada is the province of Quebec, which is entirely French. Although living where I live, it's very, very bilingual. So I don't want people to think that if you come here, you have to speak French. No, you can get away with it. Especially Montreal is like the economic center. So the way, like just using the Canadian example, the way I would speak in French about gifts and wills, be, culturally, because language very much attached to culture, it's so different than the Anglo-Saxon culture. Also, we have two different legal systems, so then
Yeah,
it adds that. But I've presented in France, and I've presented, as you know, I've presented around the world. And every time I have to go, while there's a lot of similarities, there's always nuances from
yeah,
one market to another. So you do have to adapt. And that's the element of working internationally that I absolutely love. And that's why my PhD is a comparative analysis
yeah.
between three Anglo-Saxon countries, the UK, Australia, and Canada. You can look at it and go, well, they all speak the same language. It's the same market. Oh gosh, no. So
Yeah, I imagine you have learned, I imagine through the different cultures, you probably learned how to better effectively tell legacy stories in English. I'm just assuming that. But I imagine there's probably some beautiful things culturally that you've been able to take into the English side.
yes, absolutely. Because a lot of the philanthropy has been really much developed from the Anglo-Saxon world, right? And so there's a lot of translation that happens. But as being multilingual, I always tell my clients, especially the Francophone clients or the clients where they work across the country or in different markets, I always say create content in the language while
Yeah,
keeping in mind the cultural differences. Don't try to do everything in English and then translate and think that that's going to work, because things get lost in translation and it won't sound genuine, it won't sound correct. um, and because of that, that's where a friend of mine, we created this session, which I'm looking at expanding. It is looking at, and we only did it for a Canadian conference, so we only took Canada, but I'd love to do that internationally, is looking at the diaspora and how they view um, rituals around death and dying, and how understanding that helps you as a fundraiser, how to better communicate when you have a diverse group of donors.
wow.
So
Very
what we did is we looked at, well, how's the Chinese community, or how's the Caribbean community, or the indigenous community, how do they talk about death and dying? What are the rituals? And how, something we realize is we talk about, when someone dies, we say, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. When I was talking to our indigenous people here in Canada, they were like, you would never say that. That would be so offensive. I was like, it
Yeah,
never dawned on me. So those kinds of things, it's so valuable.
it's fabulous. So yeah, brilliant. Um, I Wait, I can't believe how quickly the time has gone. I've got so many questions to ask you.
Let's keep
Give
going.
me no, give me the kind of what do you see as the top three priorities in the legacy space over the next kind of 5, 10 years?
Um, I would say so. I know everyone keeps talking about the wealth transfer that's coming, right? It's not coming in 20 years, it's happening right now. And a lot of organizations have already missed the boat. Okay. So we have to stop. I know I remember when I started fundraising over 20 years ago, we were talking about the eventual baby boomer wealth transfer. Well, the older baby boomers are starting to pass away. So if you're not engaging with them, if you're not inspiring them, creating those donor journeys that lead to a legacy, then you're sitting in the sidelines and you're basically telling them, no, I don't want your money. No, I don't want you to have that symbolic immortality through your legacy gift. So that's
Yeah,
one thing. The next thing is, if you don't have your fundraising house in order, your legacy program will suffer. What do I mean by your fundraising house in order is, have you done like some ghost shopping to see what is a donor journey from the first gift? How do you engage with them? How do you increase them? Are you capturing the right data that you will need in the future in order to start engaging with your donors? Everything you do in your annual giving and your mid-level giving program impacts the future of your legacy program. So look at that. People tend to just start thinking that, well, let's just mine our data and pull out anybody that's over the age of 60. That's fine. but that's not the entire equation. You're missing all the beginning of the equation, which is, have you started talking about legacies from the first gift? Have you been in, like Jen Love says, I I always quote her on this, is she says, start sprinkling legacy dust everywhere. Start sprinkling that everywhere. Don't start just the moment the donor turns 55 or 60, because then you're basically treating them as a cash cow,
Yeah.
which is offensive,
Um,
right?
and I think
So,
as
yeah.
well, the if we're not careful, I think the rise of community foundations and donors now being able to give to their passion for the cause might never have changed, but their feelings towards the organization might. And so the
Mhm.
risk being that they will still leave your organization a legacy directly to your organization, but they want it administered by a
Mhm.
community foundation. Now that is the consequences of bad steward, bad donor journeys. And so I think
Exactly.
it's really critical that organisations are aware of the options
Mhm.
that donors have, even to still give to their organisation.
Exactly. Exactly. So lay it on thick on the love, but be genuine.
Yeah,
Be genuine.
absolutely.
Give, be human, admit a mistake when you make a mistake, celebrate the
Yeah,
wins when there's a win, and celebrate your donors and make them feel special, because they're special. They
while
are.
they're here, yeah,
So,
not when
yeah,
they've gone.
exactly. And they're paying attention. It may not
Yeah,
look like it. They are paying attention. They're savvier than you think.
absolutely. I think
Hmm.
that's yeah, definitely. I know we discussed before we hit record that we would love to do a session with you in July. So keep an eye out, everyone, for doing a virtual session in July. We've got Gift and Will Month coming up in September. You've probably all started your strategies. Well, you should have for that. But I think it'll be a nice compliment, a nice way to start our first virtual event. Before we
Hmm.
go, though, tell us what you are when you're not a legacy nerd. Who are you, and where can we find you on the weekend?
Well, for the last 8 months, I've been so this is a house I bought last September, and it's a three-bedroom house in the woods on a lake. So I have been settling in for the last 8 months. So usually you'll find me this weekend. Tomorrow I'll be painting the garage so I can then put in all the shelves and
I
store all
know,
the
and I can
stuff.
verify how beautiful it is because you sent me some beautiful photos and I think a short video of your lake. It's
Oh,
incredible.
I
So
did.
it's
Oh gosh,
gorgeous.
yeah. 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 So there's a lot of work, and then in a few weeks we'll start digging up the backyard to install a hot tub, because it's Canada, you need a hot tub in the winter, and
Yeah,
that's just the way you roll. But yeah, but so when I'm not doing this, then usually I'm also doing my PhD on a part-time basis. I've put everything on hold while I was settling in the house, but I would be reading more stuff, reading and trying to do my lit review. So that and
amazing.
knitting. Hmm.
Absolutely amazing. Final
Hmm.
question for our Maven Time Hour, and it's what we ask all of our guests. And I think I know the answer to this. What advice would you give to your younger self that you didn't know then that you know now?
Um, oh gosh, I'm torn between a few things. I would say have confidence, stand your ground, and uh, and don't. Well, I've never let anyone tell me no, actually, because I'm pretty rebellious in that way. So just stand your ground and keep pushing all the time. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
did
and
it
don't
right.
give a shit
Yeah.
what anyone else says.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that is how I got to where I am, but keep, yeah, keep pushing
Be
forward
true to
and
yourself, eh?
be true to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And you got this. Like, what you're doing. Basically, trust your gut. Trust your gut.
Yes,
Hmm.
one of our speakers, their departing words was know that they would tell themselves that know everything will be okay, and that really resonated with me because everything
Yes.
you do, even whether it's an event, whatever you do, there's always that that
What
last
if?
minute stress, whether it's a conference or setting up a new business, everything you just but it. it's right. Everything does turn out okay, whether, it was meant to be the way it was. But everything does turn out okay, and I think that kind of stayed with me. I was like, yeah, that is a great one. Everything
Yeah.
will be okay.
It, it, like bad things tend to hurt more in our heads than they do
Yeah,
when they actually happen. Because at the end of the
yeah,
day, like we're resilient. We'll just deal
yes.
with it.
Yeah, yeah, resilience is beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, that elastic band just keeps stretching, and your capacity to deal with it
Hmm.
does as
Hmm.
well. And I think
Hmm.
that's the beautiful thing about life
Hmm.
and getting older is that you do learn to
Yeah.
deal with stuff much better. Listen,
Yeah.
it's been amazing to finally meet with you. I can't wait till the day we have you out here in person. It's going to be a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, keep an eye out for a session coming up in July and with Ligia. And thank you so much. Thank you for being part of our community. And I know you've been in the hub. You were part of our launch day. I can't thank you
Yeah.
enough.
It
And
was fun.
it's been a wonderful Maven time. So thank you. It's been fun.
Thank you for having
Bye.
me.
All
Bye.
right. See you later. Bye.